Hello folks, welcome to my YouTube channel, Watercolor Impressions. Since we have been doing a lot of winter paintings, I want to continue this series since the season exists in Toronto. This week we are going to learn how to do early morning winter painting with a glow in it. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And let's get started, guys. I'll provide the drawing template and reference. Check my video description to download it so you guys can follow with me. And I can see in the reference and this is kind of like a three-part painting. There's a midground, there's a background, there's a foreground. Even though if you see, this reference was taken through a camera and the lens is really wide, so I'm going to adjust it. I'm going to work with my composition in such a way that it looks good. So I'm going to pre-wet the paper because I want to create this beautiful gradient. And I also want to exaggerate my sky as well. And I also want to show that it's a really super early morning and I want the glow to be really extreme. And I started with yellow ochre at the top, but at the bottom I want to warm up my wash using cadmium orange. And you can see I took some tissue paper and gridded off the painting on the roof of the houses. So that's a fire station. And I let the paper, the first wash, to sit for a bit so that it dries, so I can put my second wash on top of it. I'm going to go a little bit darker on my second wash for the CN tower and for the rest of the background. And I'm just gonna do a wash on top of it, like a clear with the clean water, and that will create a faded look in our background. So I'm trying to when I paint this, I was thinking everything as a shape instead of buildings or anything else, because if you think that if you're painting a building, you're going to look for all the details in the background. So since it's a background, we have to make sure that we can simplify in such a way that it looks like a background, and we also going to fade this background as well. And this is another structure which is also gives a little bit of good complement in the midground element, and it also shows that there are shapes which is also sitting on the midground as well. So I'm going to connect the shape, and at the bottom I'm increase my value my pigment consistency. I about to say value, and it's the same thing in watercolors. If you have a lot of paint in your brush, it's going to increase the value. If you have less paint in your brush, it's going to go down on the value. You can see I used clean water and I faded my background. It looks like it doesn't exist, but it also faded my midground as well. So now I'll start with the roof, and for the roof I'm using Chinese white and a tinge of cobalt blue in it, because I want to show that the glow is reflecting on the top of the roof. Being said that, even though when I put it, it's going to fade out and it's going to show the orange wash we did at the bottom, and it also shows that it also having the spills from the sky as well. So you can see when I'm doing this, I'm trying to make sure to paint as fast as I can, and that also helps to create these beautiful strokes, because when I started I did a lot of dabbing when I painted. And in my recent years, I came to know that it's really important to paint really confident. Even if this painting worked or it doesn't matter, I usually paint everything in a confident way. I think every painter have to have that faith and keep going at it until you get a good painting out of it. And you can see this is a really good structure which is sitting on the midground. So it kind of looks like a time tower, and this is a fire station. And you can see I changed things around in this composition. You can see that the midground building is a little bit bigger, and even the CN tower looks smaller compared to the light tower. But I want the shapes to look bigger, and this creates a little bit of distance, and it also looks for composition elements. So there is my big shape, there's a medium shape, and there is my smaller shapes. And you can see before it dries out, I also introducing the windows using white paint, and it also painting on wet. So now in order to things comes to from the front, I have to introduce a darker value. So there was a tree which connects the midground building, so I also did that. So before it's drying out, I'm going to introduce a lot of darker paint at the bottom of this trees. And I also want to have a little bit of trees which is in the midground as well, but I'm making sure not to overdo this. And I'm going to connect the shape to the trees at the bottom as well. So we are approaching almost at the end of our painting. So now I'm going to take my white paint. I'm going to introduce wherever the wherever the snow deposits in the midground as well. And it's really hard to see in the reference, but if you zoom in, if you download my reference and you check it, it's there. And these are some street lights which exist in a couple of streets in Toronto, and especially this is near CNE, they also have it too. And you can see there's only 2 figures walking their dogs in the early. I'm going to introduce a couple of figures to create a little bit of interest in our scene. And since its foreground looks really weak, I also want to make sure that it holds by itself. So I'm adding those figures in such a way that it also creates some little bit of lead-in for our painting as well. And there's a couple of dogs, and now I'll do the ground wash. I was waiting for it because this is kind of like a darker wash, so I want to make sure that I want to show that there's a lot of snow deposits, and I also want my figure, what I painted, to bleed in, so it creates a contrast and shadows by itself. And you can see as soon as we added the foreground, the road on the midground to the foreground, everything came alive. I'm also making sure that I wet my paper in the midground so that the valley doesn't look darker. And you can see I'm also introducing a little bit of white paint because I want to create this impression of snow by itself. I'm taking my dagger brush, and I'm using clean water to get rid of some of the paint on the road. Even though if you see in the reference, the straight goes really straight, but I make sure that it kind of curves, and it also creates this beautiful lead-in, and it also creates this S-curve composition in our painting. So I'm adding a couple of poles from the foreground to the midground, and you can see as soon as I added that pole in the foreground, everything came alive. So now we have a 3-part painting: the foreground, the midground, and the background. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of a chimney at the back of the roof on the houses, and it also creates a little bit of interest in our roofs as well. And if you see in our reference, I changed quite a lot in my painting, because as a painter we have to tell a story, and if you paint as it is, there is no expression from you as an artist. And in recent years I've noticed that whenever you try to do a painting, you try to come up with your own expression or impression as well. And most of the paintings I do are impressions, because that's what I enjoy, because I can spend hours and hours of painting, but I don't have the patience for it. Whenever I do a painting, I try to finish it like in an hour, and I try to capture the essence of the painting. For example, if you take the reference, the essence of this painting was a morning glow, and I captured that using, even though you can see there's a lot of blue spills on the sky, but I changed it drastically in my painting to have my own vision in my painting and have my own expression in my painting as well. So these are quite a lot of bits which pops everything out. So I'm talking about bringing up highlights, and you can see in my brush I'm using a little bit of cadmium yellow and a little bit of white paint in it, so that there's a little bit of warmth in my brush. So the detailing part, to make sure that you do this at the end and not at the beginning, because it won't help you to plan your painting a little bit better. And make sure to focus on your major shapes, and once you focus on your major shapes, once you have everything have it, then you can add the highlights. So it's always saying, the saying always goes, less is always more. So keep it really less, and make sure that your impression reads well. And there's one more detail. It has wires which is attached to the pole. I also add that as well. So I usually tape my watercolor paper, and this kind of gives this really crisp look on our painting, and it also shows like how your painting looks when it's framed. So now it's your turn. Take my drawing template and reference, and let's see what you can come up with. Thanks again for watching this early morning winter painting with me. Let me know what you guys think about this painting in the comment section. If you want me to cover any other subjects in watercolors, write me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or comment below. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from our channel. And please do share with your friends and family. And good luck with your painting, folks.